Stu, we had riots in our nation's capital yesterday. Donald Trump made a speech. His supporters went and invaded a government building. I'm concerned, but what's your biggest takeaway from this event?
It's like America just keeps breaking my heart. It's been a very difficult 4 years. I know those 4 years coincide with President Trump's administration, but it has been a really strong right-hand turn, and I don't mean it politically, although obviously I do. People buying into conspiracy theories and trying to disrupt the counting, a procedure that is one of the oldest things that Congress does and is kind of meaningless when you get right down to it. Trying to, break up that and discount the votes of the American public. So it was heartbreaking to me yesterday. Was it more or less heartbreaking than what has been unveiled over 2020 with COVID and the highlighting of racial injustice? I don't know, but it was heartbreaking.
Right. I mean, as an American, I'm concerned when I see people who are rioting, breaking into our nation's capital, basically with, no security and there are police there, but it just didn't seem like it was being controlled. And it's kind of a contrast to the Black Lives Matter protests, where it seemed like there was a huge police presence. And I think a lot of people are making that comparison. What's your take on that?
How about this? How about if we treat every protest going forward the way we treated these protesters, right? My immediate reaction watching this unfold was, I'm grateful there's no military presence. I'm grateful there's no tear gassing at the beginning. I'm grateful there were no rubber bullets, because I don't want that to happen to people exhibiting and expressing their First Amendment rights. Let's recall that the Capitol Police, when folks were protesting for the Affordable Care Act, actually pulled disabled people out of their wheelchairs at one point to remove them from the Capitol building. We're going to have a sort of 9/11 type of investigation regarding the law enforcement or lack of law enforcement response to these protests and to the riots and to the attack. And I'm calling it an attack. The FBI, Homeland Security, the Capitol Police, the Washington, D.C. police all knew that this event was going to happen. They undercounted how many people were going to show up. And, the police force the Capitol Police Force has about 1,900 officers. They were clearly overrun yesterday, putting themselves in danger, putting the Capitol in danger, and causing the loss of lives. It was a disaster in an opposite way of the disasters to protests that we've seen over the last year.
I mean, I even saw a video where it seemed like the officers were opening up the gates and be like, okay, well, we can't stop you. And that's concerning. And the whole National Guard, why do you think that they weren't mobilized?
Yeah, the National Guard is actually a complicated answer because Washington, D.C. is not a state. It's not a commonwealth. It's a district. It's a territory, if you will. And who gets to call out the National Guard is usually the governor, who asked the federal government for the funding to release the National Guard. You might remember during the Hurricane Katrina disaster, the National Guard wasn't deployed because no one asked appropriately for it to be deployed. The issue is, though, why weren't they called in earlier? There were a few that were deployed, a few National Guard members doing traffic duty before the rally, and then they had to be deployed. They're not a standing army, right? So you have to make sure that there's a procedure to get them. There's reports that the mayor of D.C. had asked for the National Guard to be deployed and was ignored by the federal government. There are reports that Mike Pence, Vice President Mike Pence, actually gave the order to send National Guard troops when the rioting happened. He's not really authorized to do that. So again, it's a complicated answer, but I think it's clear that it was a failure regardless of how it played out.
To the rest of the world, how does this make us look? Because, this is a U.S. government building that's being invaded by our own people and being destroyed. And does this make us look weak? Does it make us look unorganized? How does this make us look to the international community?
D, all of the above.
All the above.
First of all, look how easy it is to attack the Capitol. Right? I mean, that it hadn't been really attacked since the War of 1812 by British soldiers, I think in 1814. But look how easy it was. You just need to show up with 20,000 people and storm the gates. So that's a problem. It's also a problem with the message we send to the rest of the world. We're supposed to be the democracy everyone looks up to. We're the shining light on the hill. We're going to come help you run your elections fairly. We're going to come help you set up your democracy. That's the message that we've been giving to other countries for at least a century. So what we've now shown is that in a silly little procedural thing that the Congress does was enough to incite an attack against the Congress, when at the end of the day, no matter what happened, Joe Biden was going to be president-elect, which is also the ridiculousness of this. In the past, on this day when they certify the electoral votes, which they do because they used to have to deliver them to Congress, right? And they open the box and they would look at the votes. It's this old-fashioned way of doing things. And this was just a procedure. It was already set in stone. The scary part about this is just all of these people who believe these lies and conspiracy theories and attacked our United States Capitol because of it.
Now that the riots have happened, we've seen the damage. I mean, people have been killed. There has been so much around this, but what happens next?
So what happens next is we need to make sure that all of our state houses across the United States and our public buildings are secure, because it's not just over, right? Not everybody who wanted to cause mayhem went to DC. They're actually in our states and are our neighbors. So we need to make sure that we're vigilant on that front. And the question of what to do with President Trump. 25th Amendment, which has been in place since I think the day Trump took office, which is very complicated and would almost require the president to agree. Impeachment, which they could actually do in as quick a time as 2 days. And that might actually keep him from being, Trump from being able to run again for president or federal office. Or there's a call like the Vermont governor, who's a Republican, Phil Scott, asking Trump to resign. I know it's just a few days away from the inauguration, but there's a lot of damage that can be done clearly, both internationally and nationally. So there are calls for Trump to vacate that office one way or the other.